Alright everybody, this is your video to figure out which camera is right for you. The Sony ZV-1 Mark II or the ZV-1. We're gonna look at the similarities and differences, specs, and most importantly, the image quality. I'll be sharing shots that I got with both of these cameras so you can see which camera you like better. I'm gonna keep the ZV-1 Mark II on the left and the shots that I got with the ZV-1 on the right. I think I just confused myself. In the meantime, let me know which camera you like better and why. The goal of this video is to lay out my experience with the ZV-1 Mark II against my experience with the ZV-1, and then you'll be able to have better purchasing information. I did a deep dive into both menu systems to see how different they truly are. Because I've owned the ZV-1 for almost 3 years, I had a very similar experience with the ZV-1 Mark II. It was very easy for me to pick it up. Before you disregard either of these cameras as only being a beginner or vlog camera, just hold on a second, because these cameras might appeal to you more than you think. If you are a ZV fan, make sure to like this video so I know to make more videos like this video. Both of these cameras are great and you can do a lot with both of them. No matter which camera you go with, don't worry, you're gonna be in good hands. They both will be a great asset to you wherever you are on your journey. And that's what we're undertaking today on the Film Alliance. Both cameras were created for content creators with an emphasis on vlogging, but the ZV-1 Mark II has a few more upgraded perks at a bit of a higher price. We will dive into more of these details later in the video, but the biggest upgrade is the fixed lens. The ZV-1 Mark II has an 18 to 50mm f1.8, a clear difference from the 24 to 70mm lens that we got with the ZV-1. When you fully zoom in with the ZV-1 Mark II, the aperture jumps up to f4, and when you zoom in with the ZV-1 all the way, the aperture goes up to f2.8. So on a zoom shot where you're zoomed in all the way, the ZV-1 has a wider aperture, meaning more light gathering capabilities. When you activate clear image zoom on the ZV-1 Mark II, you get an extra 1.5 times reach, taking you to 75mm. We were told that this is not a digital zoom, but a technology that recreates the pixels. This is different than a digital zoom where you're pretty much just scaling in, and that diminishes your image. I don't know if the same technology lives in the ZV-1, but I can tell you it looks great on the ZV-1 Mark II. But you can't use clear image zoom when you're shooting in 1080-120. Also, speaking about zooming in, the ZV-1 Mark II displays what focal length you're at, whereas the ZV-1 just gives you a meter, which leaves you kind of guessing. Before we get too far into the weeds on the differences, let's cover the similarities so we have context for the differences. They look almost identical. Both have the same sensor, the same body type, the same button layout. Both have 3-inch articulating flip screens with 921,600 dots. They take the same NP-BX1 battery. Both can shoot in the same frame rate and resolution. Both take the same media cards. They both have extremely fast autofocus. The aperture can go open to 1.8. The max ISO is 12,800, although I don't know when you would ever use that. Active stabilization, which is electronic. They can shoot in XAVC S4K. They have the same picture profiles. They have internal ND filters, but hold your horses because there might be some differences on that one we'll talk about later when it comes to NDs. And they both weigh about the same. The same body type means that you can use all the accessories that you bought for your ZV-1 on the ZV-1 Mark II, including the cage, which I did. Here's a pop quiz. Why do you need a cage? Let me know in the comments. So you might be thinking, Joe, wait a second. There's so much alike. Is there anything really different other than the lens? The answer to that question is yes, a lot actually. Firstly, the quarter mount thread that's on the bottom is in a different location on the ZV-1 Mark II than the ZV-1. This doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is, mainly due to where the battery is located. We used to have to attach an Arca Swiss mount plate to our ZV-1s just so we could open up the battery door while we're out filming, or if we're on a gimbal, we had to take the camera completely off the gimbal just to change out the battery. But now the quarter mount thread sits about 1.5 inches away from the battery door, so I was able to shoot with a gimbal and not have to put on an Arca Swiss mount plate or any other accessories to be able to get to the battery door. So that's a huge upgrade, and that's something that we've talked about many times on the Film Alliance. Both have active stabilization, which does crop in a bit on both, but because the focal length on the ZV-1 Mark II sits at 18mm, it appears to have better stabilization than the ZV-1's 24mm, even though the ZV-1 lens is stabilized and the ZV-1 Mark II lens is not. That makes sense because the longer lens you have, the more shaky the image. But if I zoom the ZV-1 Mark II into 24mm, millimeters and then turn on active stabilization, it's about the same. But from a practical standpoint, because you can go to 18 millimeters and it looks less shaky when you're walking with it, I consider that to be a big time pro for the ZV-1 Mark II. This makes the ZV-1 Mark II better for vlogging because one, you have a wider focal length, which means your face isn't smashed up into the frame, and number two, it's more stabilized. One problem we had with the ZV-1 is once you activated active stabilization with that 24mm lens and the crop, it punched in too much to your face and the frame just didn't look that good, especially if you're hand holding the camera at arm's length. Both cameras have touch focus, which I find super helpful, especially when I'm on a gimbal, but the ZV-1 Mark II has an updated looking menu system. I'm indifferent to which one is better or easier to navigate, but I think a beginner would probably like the new menu system on the ZV-1 Mark II better. You can get a lot more settings directly from the touchscreen, like shoot mode, where you can manually expose, self-timer, mic direction, Cine vlog setting, record, product showcase, skin softening, zoom, and playback. You can also click on the expose settings and adjust them from the screen. It also has swipe options like a smartphone, which you can somewhat customize to your liking. This is a huge benefit to what the ZV-1 offers, which is only touch tracking. If you want to get to something, you'll have to set up a custom button or put it in your function menu or just dig through the menu settings. But even though the ZV-1 Mark II has the touchscreen ability, I still try to customize the buttons so I don't have to muddy up the screen with finger grease. I'm not gonna lie, I did end up using the touchscreen a lot on the ZV-1 Mark II. Shh, and it was really nice. Also, the ZV-1 Mark II has a Cine vlog setting, which the ZV-1 does not. This would have been great as a beginner for me because it gives you that cinematic aspect ratio with those black bars on the top and bottom, and has a couple different styles and looks. I can see myself getting really creative with this setting. If you'd like me to attempt a film using the cinematic Cine vlog settings and try to make a sequence out of it, let me know. Both have USB charging, HDMI output, and Wi-Fi, although the USB on the ZV-1 Mark II is a USB-C 2.0, which will give you faster transfer speeds with 5 GHz compared to the micro USB on the ZV-2. The button placement is the same on both bodies. I customized the buttons and the function menu on the ZV-1 Mark II just like I did on the ZV-1 with a couple of updates, and I'll make a video about it and leave it in the description. I always set up the function menu to give me easy access to the most important features like zebras, audio record level, and white balance. When it comes to the buttons, the top mode button on the ZV-1 Mark II and the ZV-1 have different functions. The ZV-1 Mark II offers 3 functions on the press, which is photography, video, and S&Q. The mode button on the ZV-1 offers way more functions, including intelligent auto modes, memory recall, and HFR. Now that's a pretty big deal because as of today, I still can't find HFR anywhere on the ZV-1 Mark II. If you don't know what that is, it's high frame rate mode, which means you can shoot super slow motion at 960 frames per second. Sony sent me this ZV-1 Mark II, and maybe it's just a test camera so it doesn't have it, and maybe future versions or a firmware update will have HFR mode, but as of today, the ZV-1 comes out on top if you're into super slow motion. In the past, I was able to get some really incredible super slow motion shots on the ZV-1 as long as I lit my subject properly. By the way, the ZV-1 Mark II does have memory recall. You just have to get to it in a different way, through the shoot mode on the touchscreen. Memory recall is a fast way to have your camera preset to different settings for quick changing environments, like if you're in a run and gun situation. The audio on the ZV-1 Mark II is better because it has an intelligent 3-directional mic input, meaning it can pick up whatever's in front or behind the camera, as long as you set it to auto. This is great for those of you who like to talk in both places and not have a compromised audio sound. Unfortunately, both cameras don't have headphone ports on the side to help us better monitor our audio, not only on recording, but also on playback. This could be problematic if you're out in the field. This is why the audio record level in your function menu is so important, because at least you can visually make sure you're not peaking or having anything crazy go on with your audio. Both have product showcase and background defocus, which makes it super easy for influencers or content creators to showcase their products without the camera staying locked on their face. Both cameras come with the same picture profiles, and if you would like my custom profile I made for that cinematic video I put out, then I'll leave it in the description. Both cameras can shoot the same images for photography, so you won't get much difference in what your image will look like. Although both cameras do have a 20 megapixel sensor, they're really made for vlogging and videography, not photography. But with that said, you can still get some really nice photography shots. Both cameras do have internal NDs, and I couldn't find online how many stops the ND on the ZV-1 has, but the ZV-1 Mark II advertises 3 stops, so I put it to the test, and I did not see much of a difference. Now, maybe focal length has something to do with that, I don't know. If you know, please let me know in the comments. The ZV-1 has auto ND, which may be nice if you're in a run and gun situation. I don't see that on the Mark II. If you're shooting in a crowd and you only want to focus on a couple different people, the ZV-1 Mark II has multiple face recognition, which the ZV-1 does not. Both cameras have a creative look, which you can only use when you're not using a picture profile. However, the ZV-1 Mark II has 10 different looks and the ZV-1 has 7. I think that's pretty important for beginners because when you first start shooting, you might want to go out and have a creative look and you don't know how to use LUTs or color grade your footage. So you'll have about 3 more options when it comes to creative look on the ZV-1 Mark II. Both cameras also capture gyro data to be used in Catalyst Browse. So in other words, you can take your footage, throw it through Catalyst Browse, and it makes it look like your footage is super smooth, but you do have to use a higher shutter speed. I personally don't like to use Catalyst Browse because it adds an extra step to my post-production process. I think both cameras are great, but I would go with the Mark II for all of the benefits we talked about if it's in your budget. Remember that Sony has listened to our feedback about the ZV-1 and has delivered a lot of upgrades that we were hoping for on the ZV-1 Mark II. Overall, both cameras are aimed at content creators who want to create high quality videos and stills in any environment. That's about everything that I have for you. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to love yourself so you can go out and love other people. I'm Joe with the Film Alliance, and until the next one, have a nice week. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're interested in seeing some cinematic footage that I put out with the ZV-1 Mark II, I have several videos that I've posted on my channel and you can go check them out to see what this thing is capable of. I made sure to do it in low light, I did it in really bright daylight, I used the ND filters, and I also added the settings that I used in this camera so that you have the information that you need to make the right purchase decision. I'm Joe with the Film Alliance, thanks for watching, have a nice week.